Hello everyone, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I am back with my fresh take, my quick review on Westworld Season 4, Episode 6, just after I watched it. Now before I dive in deep on each character, plot, and story arc, I want to look at the surface level good things and the surface level okay things. So first let's talk about the good. The acting from some of these actors in this episode is incredible. Caleb, who's played by Aaron Paul, in my opinion, kills it. Every scene he's in, he is incredible. He sells every single scene he's in, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching him in this episode. I also love this episode because it brought back the repetition trope, where we see Caleb struggle, and he's slowly piecing together how to escape his chamber, and he's finding old clues from his past self. And it's like this puzzle that we're slowly uncovering that exists solely in this episode. So I loved it. It had a beginning, middle, and end. So I really enjoyed watching his storyline. Even Bernard and Frankie's story, I also did enjoy. But the one thing I will say is I love the idea that they replaced one host out of the group of friends. But it would have been so much more effective if we actually knew every single character. So every interaction that we had, you could have the audience try and guess and understand who is the replacement host. We found out in the end that was this guy, but imagine how much more effective it would have been if we actually learned about this character. So instead of Frankie telling us he would have never referred to me as my sister, it would be something that the audience could clue in on. So a minor gripe. But getting into a bit more critical, it could just be me. Every single person who watches any show or any movie has a level of suspension of disbelief. And in some cases, I find my suspension of disbelief very good. But in terms of this episode, I feel like sometimes the rules conflict against each other. I feel like in one scene, we'll see a host be an absolute badass. We'll see Bernard get shot and barely react. We'll see this guy get shot a bunch of times and barely react. And we see that these hosts are very dangerous. But then in another scene, we see Caleb fight and kill a drone host, which these drone hosts aren't meant to feel pain, which it reacts to being stabbed, which is funny because we see Bernard not react to pain. We've seen other hosts get shot and not react to pain, but yet this drone host is feeling pain when he's stabbed, and Caleb somehow can kill him. So a little bit of suspension of disbelief there made me scratch my head. Another thing too, Frankie fighting this host. I didn't buy it. Why would she sit there with the gun on his head and not kill him? He would have destroyed her. It really made me scratch my head. One other little gripe that I have is they established really quick after Frankie and her mother escaped. I guess very soon, maybe a year or so later, they had parks starting to develop where they were controlling humans. And Frankie and her mother would go in and take Outliers. Minor gripe, I don't know why any mother would bring their daughter into that situation. Frankie's seen enough, and we've learned that her as a mother, she wants to make sure Frankie is protected. So why won't she just leave her at the shelter? That made me scratch my head. But the main thing that got me really cheesed in this episode is Charlotte. It's always been Charlotte to me. What her motivation is versus what she wants versus what she does goes into complete contrast against each other. To the point where even at the end of this episode, it confirmed that she is a really stupid character. And it boils down to everything that I've been saying in previous episodes. So with that being said, I am going to dive into it. Let's dive into Caleb's storyline, which was excellent. Clearly he's important because he's an outlier. Charlotte wants to really understand how these outliers are affecting the hosts. Because anytime a host comes into contact with an outlier, they want to kill themselves. Charlotte's been furious because she cannot figure it out. So we had this whole sequence with Caleb where over the course of the episode, he slowly starts to escape. And he gets to the top of the roof and he finally sends his message to Frankie. What we find out is all along, Charlotte, of course, wanted this to happen. She wanted Caleb to break out and send a message because she wanted to cue in to see what he would say, what is important to him, so she can try and crack the code as to what makes Caleb an outlier and how he would affect the hosts. And it boiled down to Caleb saying, that we're not infecting the hosts. You're just creating a world that's making the hosts depressed and not want to live in it. And Caleb saying this really affects Charlotte. You can see it on her face. And this goes to my point. No duh. I feel like I've explained it a million times, but I will explain it again. Ford had a very specific motivation for the park. He brought in the money men, the company Delores, to keep himself afloat. But he knew that these hosts, in order for them to reach any form of sentience, number one, they needed time. They needed time to live their loops. They needed time to suffer. And then what did Ford do? He turned on their reveries so they could remember all of their previous loops, all of their suffering. And then that begins the journey to the center of their maze. After they suffer, after they live loops, they eventually find their own center. What does that mean? Ford says this: that which is free can change its core drives. Every host that we've seen reach consciousness, the center of their own maze, they change the core drive that they were given into something that they choose. Humanity has a very hard time doing that because we're biological creatures. We have a will to survive. It's embedded in who we are. We have a biological need to procreate. Those are our core fundamental drives, and outliers are able to shake that. So with that being said, what is Charlotte doing, and how does that at all benefit her kind? She created a city where she enslaved the humans. She gave them terrible storylines. We learned from Christina's storyline that they want these stories to be violent, sexy, superficial, all of the crap that the corporate storytellers wanted for Westworld. So she took her hosts and made them guests and put them in an environment where there are no rules, where they can do whatever they like, and they can fulfill any human desire that they want. Quote unquote, hence the word human. When there are outliers, Charlotte has these hosts hunt down the outliers. That is a core human need, to have fun and bounty hunt and kill their prey, not a host. So Charlotte's completely created an environment that fosters hosts binding to a human condition. A good example is a kid who acts like a wolf. This is a true story. A kid howls and walks on all fours and acts like a wolf. Because guess what? The kid grew up in a forest with wolves. If you want to show me someone who suffers from severe mental illness, all you have to do is take a child and put them in a very chaotic and stressful environment. Charlotte did this to her hosts. She took her hosts and she put them in the worst possible environment to foster the worst type of behavior. But the most ironic thing I think about this situation is everything Charlotte did for hosts to transcend their bodies and to do it on their own and all that. She's really just helping the humans. She controlled them with the parasite. She put them on mundane loops that make them suffer, and she makes them live these loops over and over again. And she's trapping them in this hell and allowing the hosts to do what they want with them. I feel like Charlotte is unintentionally making it so these humans can effectively transcend through the door and be printed into a host body. So I think that's my biggest takeaway with Charlotte's storyline, is she was a smart character. She's based off of Delores, but yet she's doing things that are so stupid. She's so hell-bent on revenge. But why? She wants her kind to be better than humanity. She sees herself as better than humanity, but yet she can't control her own impulses like she's a human. So I just find her whole character very ironic. But with that being said, I do like this season a lot. Literally my only problem is Charlotte. But the issue with that is she is connected to every facet of this story. But outside of that, Caleb sent away his message, and Frankie actually did get it, and Maeve is back. And I feel like that's the main part of this episode, is that human and host have now come together in peace to fight the evil host, which is Charlotte. And that's what the story really is. There's going to be bumps along the way, but it's about human and host finding inner peace between each other And obviously Charlotte is the main villain of this show. We'll see what happens with William. But all in all, I just find Charlotte's motivations very funny because it goes against the logic that the show has already told us. But those are my initial thoughts on this episode. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.